Hi everyone, welcome back. If this is your first time visiting this channel, my name is Wade Thomas. I'm the owner of Black Tie Barn Candle Company. I also started this YouTube channel to help other candle makers as well. On this channel, we'll talk about making candles, making melts, and also running a candle making business. So if you are interested in that kind of content, please consider subscribing. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and hit the bell notification as well so you're alerted whenever we post new videos. So today we're going to be doing a collaboration with Erica from Memory Box Candle Company. This is something her and I have been planning to do for a while now, but we finally got our schedules to match up so we could make it happen. We're going to be answering 10 of the most commonly asked candle making questions to both of us on each of our channels. And we're going to split that into two parts, 5 questions each. Part 1 will be on her channel and part 2 is obviously here on mine. In the description below, you'll find the link to her channel as well as the link to that other video. I would encourage you to check out both if you are interested because we'll be covering 10 different candle making questions, 5 different ones on each channel, as well as a little bit of a bonus question to each of us as well, more on a personal level and how it relates to our specific candle making business. So hopefully you enjoy this video. Eric and I both appreciate you being here. Don't forget to subscribe to both channels. We hope that you enjoy both videos. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's dive into the 6th overall question, first one of this part. Which is, Erica, what would you say is the best way to get started candle making?
I think the best way is, well, in terms of if you're getting started with candle making, you really want kind of more of a straightforward way of doing it. I would say to get a starter kit. I feel like that's the easiest way to go about it, of just kind of, you have all of the materials there that you can work with. But in terms of actually, I try to tell people this because I know, especially now that there's so many different candle videos out there, and there's, the Facebook group, the DIY Facebook group from Jeff Stanley, it has blown up so much with so much engagement and so many different people. And I feel like it can get really overwhelming with so many different options. And I feel like a lot of times people think that their first candle needs to be perfect and that whatever they do, it has to be perfect. Whereas my first candle, it was made with Hobby Lobby soy wax, and I had fun with it. I didn't think about anything except for just being so excited to actually create something. So don't get overwhelmed and lose the fun aspect to it, the creative aspect to it. But if we're being just kind of a simple answer, I say a starter kit is probably the best way to go. But we understand that right now kind of shortages are happening, and it's hard to get supplies right now. So in terms of jumping into candle making right now, it is a little bit more of a difficult time. And I think we all kind of see that and understand that, but I don't think it's going to stay like this forever.
No, I don't think so either. I would agree with the sample kit, and also just to tail onto that, I don't think the focus early on should be about performance or how successful the candle was. The very first thing you should try to do is just make sure you're going to actually enjoy making one, just the process. So like you, the first thing I did was I went to either Michael's or Hobby Lobby, bought off the shelf wax, whatever fragrance oil they had, whatever random wick they had, because I knew nothing about wicking, and a random vessel. It was atrocious. It was the candle was a disaster. One of the videos on my channel is about how I got started. It's like my kind of how Black Tie Barn started and all that. And I talked about this in more detail. It was a train wreck though. But I liked doing it. And so I would say is to encourage everyone out there that hasn't started yet is just to get a kit or buy something from a local craft store, whatever you can get your hands on, because the whole point is just to find out if you like doing the process. You can worry about making it work later. It's kind of irrelevant at first. Once you've determined if you like doing it, then invest in another sample kit and start trying to see how productive you can be and how successfully you can make a candle. But I still wouldn't worry about how good it is for quite a while. Yeah, best way to get started is research, experiment.
Yep, exactly. And I feel like a lot of times, especially now with knowing about starting candle businesses and learning about all that, that sometimes the aspect of starting the business can kind of overshadow the actual enjoyment and experimentation process with candle making. Because sometimes when you're getting started with it, and if you're thinking to yourself, you've never made a candle before, and you're like, I'm going to start a candle business, just like what you said, make sure you enjoy it because you're going to be making a lot.
Yeah.
You're making a lot of candles.
Yeah. And you don't want to end up hating what you're doing.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And even if you, and to be honest, even if you love making candles, sometimes it does feel like a chore. If you're like, okay, I need to make all these candles, it can feel that way. But if you already dislike it, and then you also feel like sometimes it can be a chore, like you have an order to fulfill or whatever it is, then that can really put a lot more stress, and it could kind of kill any passion you had for the actual business side if you don't love your product.
Right.
So I feel like just kind of enjoy the process in the beginning, try out different waxes. Don't feel like you have to rush into starting a business, because it's a long road ahead if that's what you want to do and you're just getting
Yeah.
started with the learning aspect to it.
Yeah, I would honestly encourage not to even think about business early on. Just this, think of it as a hobby. You're just trying out and you want to see if you enjoy it. Then if you enjoy it, then you start making it successful. And then you could start saying, can I see myself doing this as a business? Think about everything that goes into it, because running a business is more than just about making candles.
Mm-hmm.
So let that come a little bit later, because you're right. You will burn yourself out before you've even started if you're focused and stressed about how to make it a business before you even really just enjoy making candles. And to your point, there are days where it's going to feel like a chore and you absolutely hate it. And so if you get to the point where you are having to kind of keep up a lot and you're making a lot of candles and it's kind of growing for you, my advice is to create yourself a schedule, have making days, have days where you're on social media and working on labels, marketing, whatever. Create a schedule for you, so that it's like work in a sense, so that you have something to stick to schedule wise. But that way you're not feeling pressured or rushed, like, oh man, I just got an order in Sunday and I need to go ahead and make a candle real quick. No, you're making days on Monday or Tuesday. So wait till then. I think schedule can really, really help people out early on.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I will very much admit that in the very beginning, I was infatuated with the process of making. I've always been very creative and I've always liked making things. I would sew pillows when I was younger. I would just like to make pillows. So, and jewelry, and, I would paint. I'm very much love that kind of stuff. So when I first realized that I could make something from scratch, I could take all of these materials, put it together and put it into a tangible item that people would actually want to purchase. As
And you
soon as
made
you
it.
I made it, like, look what I made.
Yeah.
And you just want to share with everybody. And I was obsessed from the very beginning. At the very beginning of me first making it, just the whole process of it, I loved it. And I was already really kind of into the whole business side of doing reselling on eBay and stuff. So that kind of transitioned into wanting to make candles a business. So I do think that, me looking back, I wouldn't say I rushed into it, but I should have taken my time a little bit more. So that's why I very much want to relay that to everybody else, of just kind of take your time with it. I understand the pressure and the excitement of wanting to actually sell, because you feel so connected with it. You're like, I made this and people actually want to buy it, and you want to get to that point. So many people just want to get to the point where they're selling. But once you get to that point, there's so many other things that come with that. So
And
just
pressure, you start feeling a lot more pressure.
exactly, you feel a lot more pressure. So if you are not confident in your product when you start selling, it can have so many other issues. And, to be honest, I have been still experimenting with what I'm doing in my product. And I talked about in the video on my channel that the wax that I'm comfortable using, the manufacturer, it seems like the formula has changed a little bit. So no matter how much you test and how much you know what you're working with, you never know what can change. So it's kind of just like learning to learn is like the most important part before you move into actually selling the product.
Yeah, and not to get discouraged early on. Well, actually, don't get discouraged ever, but especially early on, because as we talked about, you're going to be experimenting and trying things out, and most likely it's not going to go well early on. That's completely okay, because just think long term end goal. You're learning. That's the whole point right now. Is you're just learning to figure out the industry and how to make candles. And so it's a process. I don't know if you are, if many viewers here would be, but I don't know if you golf. Golf is a really, really stressful, frustrating activity, and it's really challenging. And you will get so mad and so frustrated. But as soon as you make one good shot, it's like, this is the best thing ever. And then you just want to go golf all the time. And so candle making is very similar. Like, it's going to be some work and frustrating parts, but as soon as you make that first good candle that you're so happy with, you just feel like, oh my God, I just made that. Like, I did that. and now people are enjoying it. And so you'll get there. Just take your time. Don't feel rushed or pressured, but more importantly, just enjoy the process. That's the biggest tip, I think.
Your connection to golf, I feel like that's really kind of a relatable thing. And if any of you have ever had to go through something that's really challenging and you really push through it, those are really good qualities to have, especially with business and running a business. The connection for me, I ride a motorcycle with my boyfriend, and learning how to ride was very challenging. And I kept stalling every single time I would try to go, and I kept getting more and more and more and more frustrated. So the more frustrated you get with it, it kind of starts to blind you from so many different things. And you need to kind of take a step back and be okay with I don't want to call them mistakes. It's more of just a trial and error. I always talk about trial and error when it comes to making candles, because there's so much that goes into it that is kind of very unknown, and you never know unless you try. You know, I get a lot of people asking me, especially when it comes to like blending fragrance oils, like, you know, what if I blend these two fragrance oils together? And I'm like, I don't know what happens. Yeah, you know, like you never know unless you try. There's so much that happens. Or what if I blend this wax with this wax? I'm like, I don't know, try it, you know?
Yeah, that's how we figured stuff out, is you just got to experiment, and having tenacity, the willing to kind of, like you said, just push through things, because it's going to get tough at times. So having tenacity, and then also thick skin, because you're going to get people that don't like your products. They don't like the way it smells. They don't like the way it looks. They don't like your labels. You're getting into something that, you know, whether it's a hobby or you're giving some away or as a business later, you can't escape opinions. And so you just got to learn to deal with those, learn from them if you can, but don't take them too personally, because that'll bum you out. So just having thick skin and being able to push through are good qualities to have too.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Okay, so next question is, how do you get more sales when you're actually selling candles? You have your products out there, you have your Etsy, your website, whatever it is. How do you get more sales?
Well, there's a lot of ways you could go about answering this. And I don't want to take forever on it. There's a lot of different strategies. In fact, actually, that's probably the first thing I'd say, is have a strategy, come up with a plan. You know, it depends if you sell online versus selling at craft fairs, whatever. It's going to depend on your situation, your business, but formulating a strategy and then going like after that strategy with everything. So advertising, when I say advertising, it doesn't mean you got to go spend a bunch of money in advertising. I just mean market yourself, get your brand out there, get on Facebook, Instagram, you know, hand out freebies. That's a really good one. Surveys. There's so many ways you can go about getting more sales, but patience and persistence are probably the biggest ones. Your business might start off slow. In fact, I mean, almost all businesses do, but if you stick with it and don't get discouraged by a lack of early sales, just keep pushing, because if you get discouraged and you give up, you didn't give yourself a chance. So stick with it, be consistent with your content. That's the number one thing I struggle with, being consistent with posting and reaching out to your customers. Have a mailing list is a really good idea sometimes, or an email list. But as far as just getting more sales, I think I probably have to know more specifically, I guess, a specific question within that, but getting your brand out there, being consistent, and then looking at ways and gaps in the market. You mentioned labeling in the part one of this video, why that's so important. If you feel like your candles are struggling and they're sitting on the shelf and they're just not really going anywhere, just try mixing something up and trying something new and see if it makes a difference. As an example, I had a fragrance oil or a candle with the name it was just a spiced cranberry or something like that. I don't remember early on, and it didn't really sell much. All I did was change the name to Cranberry Crave, and in like 1 month, I started selling like 10 times more just because of a change on the label. You want to do things that just make people want to try your product. Sometimes it's the look of the label, sometimes it's the name, sometimes promotions. Promotions are a good way to get things moving early on. So those are a few tips. What do you think?
So from what I've learned, especially with the social media aspect of it, of Instagram and stuff like that, I have learned, because a lot of people that aren't selling yet, but they're still getting started with like creating their business and stuff. I started my Instagram before I even started selling, and I would post about, I would post pictures of my products and then talk about, the making process. I feel like I personally feel, and that's what I wanted to start from the very beginning of my business, was to be very, even if you don't want to put your face out there, just don't always just talk about like, buy this, here's my candle, click on the link, buy this. Like there's so much more that goes into it that you can sell your product without selling it. And yeah, there's Instagram ads, there's Facebook ads. I still need to try Pinterest, because Pinterest is a really good way.
It's just overwhelming to me. I've never.
I'm like, I'm gonna try though. I'm gonna try. But there's so much that can go into it with getting more sales. And also, like what you were saying, I mean, if you have to think about what is your strategy and where do you want to sell, because there's different ways on if you want to sell locally and at farmers markets than if you want to sell online. So like your selling strategy is going to be completely different. So with stuff like that, like selling locally, if you are a part of, I think that social media, I mean, as much as it can be really overwhelming, it's really, really good for small businesses and getting your name out there. Like for instance, I truly believe that TikTok is probably the best way to get organic sales right now. I just feel like it's the best way to be able to get your name out there, have people find you where you don't have to pay for any marketing.
I'm about to start trying to start that soon.
Yeah, I'm like it. I have 2 videos right now, so I'm trying as well, because it's a whole different platform. I actually had tried to film a couple, but then I realized I was just basically doing what I do on YouTube, because I'm so used to YouTube. Yeah. And I'm like, you have to do it a little bit differently. That's more for like TikTok worthy. So putting yourself out there is how you can get more sales, and that's really scary for a lot of people.
And customers like transparency too. So it's like you're saying about getting yourself out there and not just posting products for sale. Show them behind the scenes a little bit. I post a lot of clips and short videos and pictures of me testing products, like pouring testers and then sampling them out. And customers like that. That creates a little bit of buzz. So I had a bunch of pre-sale orders just on a few candles that I tested one time. It wasn't even for sale yet. I wasn't even making it, but I was just testing them, and it generated a lot of, oh my God, I can't wait to try that. Let me know as soon as it's done. And then as soon as it posted, it had a bunch of sales already. So just showing behind the scenes, transparency. Customers like personal engagement.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to go with. I'm like, I mean, even if you don't want to show your face, like any kind of personal engagement where it's not just people. I feel like people nowadays, especially with the way that people are able to find businesses and want to support small businesses behind the brand name. So many big brand names. I mean, you don't look at Target and think of one person. You just think of Target as just the company. So I think that being more personally engaged with your audience, with everybody, and showing them what's going on. I love asking questions, that kind of stuff, like just kind of trying to engage with everybody. But yeah, I mean, there's this one girl on Instagram, her name is Jessica. Her business name is Hawthorne Company, but she was able to build up a really good, strong following. She's never sold anything before. And it's just her photos, her aesthetic. That's another thing. The aesthetic of your Instagram and your brand, even if it's not like your social media, but just having a strong aesthetic of your brand and not being kind of all over the place with it.
Be consistent with it.
Exactly, being consistent with it. So
for example, a lot of your, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, a lot of your pictures, they have the same color dynamics. And then they have the same type of feel to every one of them. And then now my website's undergoing some changes. So I have some temporary pictures put up for a lot of products, which look like junk right now. But for the most part, I take all my product photography, at least for my main line of candles, with the same type of dramatic black background. The photos, the candles just kind of, it's kind of hard to explain without seeing it, but I try to go with that feel as well. I want to be consistent with my brand, but you can step outside of that for purpose. For example, seasons, like Christmas, things like that, they should have a different kind of vibe to your product photography. But as long as you're being consistent with your strategy and your visuals, that will help with brand recognition for sure.
Yeah. And being consistent is probably the most important thing. You can't just post 4 photos and then, 3 weeks goes by, you haven't posted anything. And then you're
And
like,
I'm
oh,
terrible
nobody's
about
following me. Yeah.
it. I am terrible. Like I honestly need someone like I would like to find a partner or someone that I can help me with social media. I just don't have time for it. And so that's
And
my biggest issue is a lack of time.
well, and that also kind of, I did speak about this a little bit on part 1, but that also comes to delegating certain things. If you feel like either don't have time or you're just like, I don't feel like I am even gonna focus on this, so delegating things out, paying for other people to do things if you feel like it's not something you want to do, paying for people to make your labels, or hiring somebody to help you with marketing if it's something that you're not as strong at. That's why not everybody is like a one person thing. I mean, especially as you start to grow, you realize that you're being pushed and pulled in so many different directions, and it can be really, really challenging.
And you can try those on test runs. If you have someone offering to help you on social media, like a social media manager or something like that, try it for a month or two and make sure it fits for you, or have someone design a logo or a label for you. And if you like it, then you can continue using them. You don't have to, doesn't just because you go with someone doesn't mean you're stuck with them forever. Go through test runs and see if you feel like it's helpful or valuable to you. But yeah, delegating and getting some help for sure is a big bonus. So this is an interesting question that I started getting more recently. And I think it's because some of my videos I've showed or I've talked about how to do small batching versus large batching. And so what are some tips on transitioning as a small kind of hobbyist or small candle business, transitioning from making small batches, 1, 2, 4 candles at a time, into larger batches, like if you got to make wholesale orders, 50 candles, 100 candles or plus?
Yeah. So, to be honest, I have never made, I don't have any wholesale orders. I want to, but I haven't had any large orders. The largest amount I've ever made at once are all of these behind me. And that's just getting ready for the launch of my website. So that's kind of what I can speak on. And also from the very beginning of me getting started. So when I first, opened up my Etsy shop, I was doing the double boiler method with everything. So I was waiting and making about 3 to 4 candles at a time. When I would pour, go add more. And now that I have my Presto pots, I can make a lot more. And I know that there's even bigger type of things that you can get that when we move out of here into a house, I'll be able to get and have more room for. But definitely if you're wanting to make a lot larger batches, you can't stick with the double boiler method. It's really good to do in the beginning when you're first getting started, but you can't continue doing that because it took forever. I mean, it took 20 minutes to make like a whole, like 3 or 4 candles. So it took way too long. So having my multiple Presto pots that I have has helped greatly. Also, something else that I realized is helping me so much more now and where I am with my business is by doing batches based on scent. And so I have my wax melts and I have both sizes of my candles, and all of them have slightly different formulas and, different waxes that I use. So what I'll do is I'll make all of those scents at once, where I used to just do it by size. So I would do by size. I would do 4 larger candles, then I would do of one scent, then I would do 4 larger candles of another scent, and then keep going. And that time of trying to clean out the pitchers in between, make sure that I'm not, trying not to contaminate the scents. And by going through and doing batches with the same scent, that has made it so much faster. It made it so much quicker to make these for me personally. But the biggest thing has definitely been the Presto pots, because you can melt down so much more wax. And for those of you that don't know, a Presto pot is basically just like, it looks like a cooking pot, but there's like an electric thing attached to it. So it melts down all the wax, and you don't put any fragrance oil inside. You just take out the wax that you need and then add fragrance oil to a pitcher. And then you can it keeps it relatively at the same temperature. And then you're able to kind of make so many more candles instead of having to wait for the double boiler to melt down the wax every single time.
Yep. I would say, my advice is similar to that. I think to summarize it, it's just about creating a system and and having a process. Now your system will change over time, but having a system in place that is scalable is really beneficial. So for example, the Presto pots are not scalable. So the sooner you can get away, I mean, not the Presto pots, just the double boil method, the sooner you can, as long as you know that that's not scalable, you have a plan for what can be scalable down the road, like Presto pots or larger melt tanks, things like that. But just think about however you're making candles today. If I were to need to do a batch 4 times the size, what changes would I need to make that work? So if you are stuck with only being able to do the double boil method, then one solution to that is, and I showed this on a video, but get a big canning pot. And that way you can at least have several pitchers in the pot melting wax at the same time. So it's kind of like doing a Presto pot without having to invest in one yet if you're not ready. So if you already have several, like 3 or 4 pouring pitchers, then that you could do that right now. You could start that right away. And so that's like a tip for how to scale pouring pitchers. But have a good space, whatever space you have to work in, figure out how many you can do in that space, and then create a system around that. Like Erica said, later on you can get Presto pots, and then later maybe even melter tanks. And then, depending on how big you get, they've got big floor tanks that do everything for you. Those are rather expensive though, and that's kind of down the road. But the simple tip is just to create a system and a process that is scalable. I don't like to recommend things that you would have to stop doing later. So for example, a lot of people preheat their jars. Nothing wrong with that. And starting out, it's great, and it can help with jar adhesion, things like that. But can you keep preheating your jars in the oven when you're making 100 size candle batches? You can't. So I recommend figuring out how to make candles without having to preheat jars if possible, because it's scalable that way. You don't have to change your whole process down the road. And it might require a little bit more upfront testing, but it will make your life easier later. And so I like to think long-term, can I replicate what I'm doing now with larger batches? If not, what can I do to try to make that work?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because what also goes into that is your access to your supplies. Does that allow you to scale? Right. The access that you have, the suppliers that you have, are you just getting everything from one supplier like I am? I'm trying to look into sourcing from China and getting larger amounts, larger jars, or larger quantity of jars to be able to have, because that also can be something where, and I've definitely experienced this, that sometimes you want to be able to make more candles, but maybe the supplies that you have, you just are able to get that. So that's also something else that comes in with like the whole business side of things, to make sure that you have that as an option to be able to scale.
Yeah. And one thing that help you be able to source several suppliers is to at least have 2 versions of every product. So for example, you've got 2 main sizes of candles that you sell. I have like 3. And so that way, if I have troubles getting a particular jar and customers want that, I can at least say, well, I'm currently out of that, but at least I have it in another size for you.
Exactly.
Different kinds of waxes, I wouldn't recommend it early on, but down the road, that can help you in a pinch as well. If you know backup option basically for yourself as a maker. If you're struggling getting a certain type of wax, and like right now, wicks have been really difficult for a lot of people to get. So a little tip here, whenever I do all my testing, I always find my primary wick and a backup secondary wick. That way, if I can't get my first wick, I can still continue to make that candle with a second wick. It might not be my preferred one. It might be like just something not quite as good as the first one, as long as it still burns well and it's a good candle. I mean, I wouldn't say like put something there that doesn't work very well. But so I like to find 2 good wicks for every candle. So yeah, I think having a process and just thinking ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea about the other wick too. I definitely need to do that as well, because I have very much only used one series of wick. And I know that I need to branch out and make sure that I have other options when things like this happen. And I'm just hoping that this is the worst that it will be for us, but we never know what's going to happen. So,
well, it's partially because of the pandemic and supply chains having issues, but also there's just so many more candle makers entering the industry right now. So combine those 2 together and that explains the shortages. The good news is the suppliers and manufacturers now, just like every other business, have gone through this and they're going to learn from it. And I think I feel more confident that this will actually help longer in the long term than it will
Yeah.
hurt. So
Like maybe expanding their production so that, so that we'll have enough for all of us. So this kind of goes into what we were just talking about at the very end. So how many different containers, so how many different sizes, different vessels, jars, whatever it is, do you recommend, and how many different scent options should you have?
well, the answer to this question will depend on how long you've been doing it and how much your business has grown. Because obviously, after you're larger, you could have multiple jars and you might have different lines of candles. I've got a few different lines of candles, but I would say early on, and for most small businesses, I would say 2 to 3 sizes. So as an example, maybe kind of your standard small candle like this, and then something closer to your size as like a larger version. And for me, these are cotton wicks and these are wood wicks. So that's another way I differentiate between the two. And then maybe a candle 10. So you've got 3 standard candle options. Although that can be overwhelming at first. So starting with 1 or 2 is completely fine. But I think 2 to 3 in the long run is a good strategy as far as options and sizes. And then for scent options, this is tough. I might be the wrong person to answer this one because I have too many, and I know that, and so I'm actually trying to cut down. But I end up liking it, and then I can't help myself, and then I test it, and then I'm like, oh well, it works, so I add it. I don't. It's not that it's bad. It doesn't hurt sales or customers or anything like that. It just makes it harder for you as a candle maker to keep up on that much inventory. You would all freak out if you had any idea how many oils I have and how much money in oils I have sitting in inventory. It's frightening. I don't even want to say the number because it's embarrassing.
It's the most expensive part of candle making is the fragrance oils, I think.
Yeah. And I've got, use your imagination on how many this would be, but imagine big racks, like storage racks, basically the size of like your 2 shelves behind you put together. Mm-hmm. I've got about 4 or 5 of those completely stocked with oils. It's bad.
What sizes?
They vary. They're all sick. They're all 1 pound and up though.
Yeah.
So and then I've got tons of samples too, but again, I do use them. I use them I have a lot more wax melts in my line than I do candles, just because they're easier. And then I have some specific lines that are for specific reasons or certain customers. But to answer the question, I would think if you're just starting off, experiment with 4. Make sure things are going well. You like what you're doing. And then when you're ready to start kind of running a business, I would say having an Etsy site or a website, I would say 8, maybe somewhere in the 8 to 15 range, 8 to 12. 8 to 12 is probably smarter. And then that should be your kind of core. And then you can alternate and rotate scents through seasons if you want and stay within the 8 to 12. Or kind of what I do is I keep 8 to 12 all the time. Plus I throw in seasonal ones when they come up. So that would be my suggestion, but I'm not good at following my own advice on that. So
you never are.
No,
I always tell people to do things that I never do.
Yeah. And we're I'm the coach here, not the player. So if I had to tell someone what to do, it would be that versus carrying too many like I do.
Yeah, because as you're right. And as I learned too, the more scents you have, the more inventory you're going to have, the more candles. So you're going to want to keep in stock. And if you only have 4 cents versus 40 cents, it's totally different. So what I recommend, and I actually brought this up on one of my videos recently, and it was more of talking about people just starting out and just kind of giving a clear answer of what I would recommend. Of course, this would vary and change based on how long you've been in business for. But I said, when you're just starting out, try to have 2 different size candles. You can also have wax melts too. So 2 different sizes, a smaller one, a larger one, whatever you want to have. And then in terms of scents, I said 4 to 8 different scents to choose from. And then also when you keep things in stock, I said have about 4 to 6 in stock of each at any given time or when you're getting started. Because so many people ask about that. They ask about, how many should I keep in stock? And that was my biggest issue in the beginning, was not knowing how many to have in stock. Should I have 5 in stock? Should I have 15 in stock, how much was going to be too much and how much was going to be too little. So that was the biggest challenge for me in the beginning. And now I'm starting to make more and have a little bit more on hand and in stock of each of the scents. But yeah, when you're first getting started, if you overload yourself with different scents, which again, it's the most enjoyable thing. And it's hard when you're testing so many different varieties and you're like, but I want this one and this one and this one, and I had stated that it's better to have a variety of the scent categories than it is the total. So like a fruity scent, a floral scent, a masculine musky scent, a fresh, clean scent. It's better to have that variety because then you can really, catch everybody's interest with the scents. If you have if you have like 5 bakery scents and then 1 floral scent, you're limiting yourself on what your audience is going to be, or what your customer base is.
And it's really important to have 8 to 10 really good scents than it is to have 30 average ones. So build your core fragrances, your core candles first, and then once you're confident with those and they're winners, then you can start incorporating more as you go. But like you said, and like I alluded to, it is easy to get wrapped up into fragrance oils and just loving them and wanting to try them. It is by far the most fun. Sometimes you can't help yourself, but just try to keep yourself disciplined. Like maybe have a hard number for your website. I don't want more than 16 cents at any time. And so if you want to add something, well, then figure out which one has been your least seller and replace it. Periodically doing that can help. Like I said, I do give myself a little bit more flexibility during the holidays because we sell so many more candles. But I also do that with my stock. I keep more stock around the holidays than I do the rest of the year. We talked about this earlier, I think before we started the video, but normally I stock up and have, based off my business and my time of year, whatever I normally need, I keep stocked all the time. But during the last year with the pandemic and shortages on supplies, I don't want to be stuck with 20 of one candle or scent sitting on my shelf where it's not really moving. And then I need more of something else and I'm short on supplies. So exactly. I have kind of cut back and I only keep a couple in stock, or not a couple, but a smaller percentage of stock. And if I have to make more, I have to make more. It's just a precautionary thing I'm doing right now. So.
And also this is what I did. This is what I did in the beginning of first getting started with my Etsy shop. Was I didn't know what scents were going to be really good sellers. Yeah. So in the beginning, I wanted to have more scents and less in stock of those scents to test the market and see what are people wanting. And then you can start focusing your supplies on that, and you can take away scents that people aren't buying as much. Mm-hmm. And you can really learn from that. You can learn a lot more from offering more scents. And again, I mean, there's so many pros and cons to having a lot of scents and not a lot of scents, but I did want to test more out there. And now I have 16 main ones, and then I have seasonal ones. Again, that's probably too much, but I have the ones that I've kind of created and I know I want to keep in my line. Yeah. But last year was my first year in business. So my seasonal scents, I wanted to do 6 seasonal scents, 6 in fall and then 6 in winter. And it was so much for me. It was way too much for me. So this year I'm doing 2, maybe 3 for seasonal, just because I know personally for me, it's going to be easier for me to still keep my regular ones in stock. Because during the season, I was only having those 12 cents that I was making all the time. Yeah. So learning from my first year, I learned that was too overwhelming for me and that I needed to really cut back on how many cents, not to mention how many leftover fragrance oil I had after the season ended. Yeah.
And it's just more batches you got to make and more different products you got to make. It just makes things more difficult logistically for you too, if you're already busy. So like we said in part 1 on your channel, just keep it simple. Less is more sometimes. Pace yourself. And then once you kind of got the hangs of things, you can always expand, but you don't want to overcommit yourself early on. And then you're just stressed out from that point forward. So
yeah, no, I agree.
All right, so the last normal question, but at the end we'll have kind of a bonus question for us. But the last question is, what do you see does better for your business overall, either in terms of profit or sales, candles or melts?
So definitely Both candles. I sell more and I make a higher profit on my candles. And I was kind of thinking about why that would be. And it's probably because not everybody has wax melters. Anybody can light a candle, but not everybody has wax warmers. That's not to say that I don't sell my wax melts, because I do. I definitely stock up because I know it's kind of an easy thing to add on.
Yeah.
And I know that my wax melts are good quality, so I know that people want to continue buying them. But yeah, no, I know that for profit, definitely my candles make me a higher profit on them. But yeah, and I can see on my Etsy shop too what are the highest sellers,
Yeah.
and it's always candles first, and then I think, because my top selling scent is Saturday Morning Cartoons in candles. And then it's another scent. I think it's the honeysuckle jasmine scent from Candle Science. And then right after, it's the wax melt of Saturday Morning Cartoons. So that also comes into play of, is it the candle?
Right.
Or is it what it is, or is it what it smells like?
Yeah.
So is it the scent, or is it how it like, is it a candle or a wax melt, or is it the scent that people are going after?
Yeah. It's kind of a tough one because it's not really comparing apples to apples. There are people that only buy candles because they don't have melters, and there's people only buy melters because they're more cautious about burning a candle in the house. Maybe it's pets or small kids or something like that. But for the most part, I mean, I completely agree. I do sell more candles. Last time I checked, it was about 4-to-1 of candles over melts. That being said, the percentage of sales of wax melts is still high enough where there's no way I would ever not sell them. I still sell,
yeah,
you still sell plenty of them. Now, profit's the weird one because I definitely have more profit because the candles cost more money. So the dollar amount in profit is higher on candles without a doubt. But my profit margin's actually higher on melts because melts are they're so cheap to make. I buy things in bulk. So my melts cost around 60 to 70 cents at the highest end to make, and they sell 4 or 5. So that margin's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you obviously have to sell 4 of those to get the profit in dollar amounts as you would from one candle. So profit margin's awesome. And actually they're much easier to wholesale too because of that. But yeah, in terms of overall sales and profit, it's definitely candles. I don't know if you do this or not, and I don't even know if this is a good strategy, but I mentioned briefly earlier, I have a lot more melts that I sell than I do types of candles, because a lot of times when I've got new oils in, it's much easier to test and get melts made. And so I'll have some melts done in certain oils that I haven't yet rolled out into candles. So I have too many candles, the sense as it is, and I have probably 3 times that in melts, but it's so much easier in melts. And then what I can do is after 6 months or a year, ones that just don't sell very much, I can take them out of the mix. But it's kind of a good way to test the market for your candles, because you can find out people like that scent as well. So
yeah, because people, I mean, if they get it in a melt, people will ask if it's available in a candle, or I've had it vice versa too. For instance, there is a scent that I haven't brought back in a little while, but it's a lemon scent. And lemon scents don't do too well in candles. I had learned it smelled very, I don't know if you've experienced, but it kind of had that fuel smell to it when it was burning.
It can be a little chemically. They work much better mixed with stuff. Like with lavender is good.
Yeah. So maybe I'll play around with that. But when I was trying to do just straight lemon, and I love it, it's amazing in a wax melt, terrible in a candle. So I've only ever offered it in wax melts because I knew that this was not going to do well, in a candle form. So that's also something you can do too. If it doesn't work in a candle, it doesn't necessarily mean it won't work in a wax melt.
Right.
Sometimes people really love that in a wax melt. And sometimes I have customers that only want wax melts and that's all they want.
Yeah. I've got some that's all they buy. But vice versa to your last point too, just because it works in a candle or you don't like it in a candle doesn't mean you'll like it in a melt, but also you might like it in a melt and then it just doesn't perform well in a candle too, which is another reason I have some that are only in melts, is they just didn't work that well in the candle. But vice versa too. So yeah, I would agree overall. Melts are easier, quicker, definitely worth adding, but I would never not do candles. It's just candles.
But I would argue though that I think somebody could create a very successful business just around wax melts.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
that could just be a whole business in and of
I
itself.
know, I know a couple. That's
Mhm.
their whole business, and um, it makes me jealous because
So
it's a much
easy.
easier one, much
So
easier.
easy.
Uh, but uh, but yeah, my business was built off of candles, so that will always be the staple. And then I also do melts as well.
Mm.
I'll never not do either one. So
Yeah, same. I love them both.
well, that's it for our last five questions from from you all that we get frequently. And again, check out the other five on Erica's channel. But just like she did on part one, more of a, I guess, a personal related question to each of us as well, and that is, what is our favorite thing about candle making and running a business, just personally?
Um, I I've mentioned this in a couple of my other videos, but when I was growing up, I never thought that I was going to run a business. I was never that person. I never ever wanted to do that. It was never something that even crossed my mind until I got older, into like my early 20s. I had really started to branch out with that. But with candle making, I feel like for me personally, it's very rewarding. It's really rewarding to spend all this time and learn all this knowledge, and then you're actually creating something yourself, and then you're able to sell it and people actually like it. It's the coolest thing ever, in terms of when you actually break it down and you think of, I made this and people want to purchase it. And of course, like, yes, like making a profit, like, and turning it into a business is really enjoyable. And I have actually really enjoyed the business part of it all, and learning and growing and trying to learn the marketing and trying to learn all the back end stuff, even if my mind is crazy all the time and I don't know what I'm doing with like inventory. And there's so much stuff that you start to learn, but the more you grow with it, the more you grow as a person. Like, I have grown so much more from just experimenting and having to put myself out there and learning and problem solving. I've learned so many good problem solving skills, customer service, talking with, customers that maybe they had an issue or something happened and you have to handle that situation. It really kind of pushes you forward in life, of just kind of growing up in a way. Even if you were already grown up, it grows you up in a different way of just being able to handle certain things. So for me, it's everything to me. I wouldn't be doing, if I wasn't doing this, I don't know. It's helped me in so many ways. I was in a really just not a great time in my life. And then just being able to focus on this and have so many goals and know that you are creating all of this and it's all on you. It's scary, but it's also really rewarding. It's a mixture of so many different emotions. And you really only understand when you're going through it. But yeah, it's my whole life. And I love it. I love that it's my whole life. It's
That's that
24/7.
yeah, that's awesome. We talked earlier about both of us are passionate about this, and to me that jumps off the screen too. So I completely understand everything you're saying. In fact, mine's kind of similar, and that's about just self-development, basically a purpose. I've always been a big, firm believer that we're not like we weren't meant necessarily just to like be born, go work a regular job until we retire and then we die. And it's like, that's great. Like, we all do that, but I'd like to do something else in addition to that. I want to feel like I did something for myself and for others that I had more control over, versus just working for someone that, had me crossing T's and dotting I's. And so it's that self drive and the feel like that I'm in control of something and building something for myself or for for my kids. Life is full of uncertainty. We saw that with the pandemic. Lots of people's lost their jobs, and just to be able to have something to fall back on too, kind of gives you that selfish, that reassurance, that confidence that you can fight through stuff. You learn a lot about yourself and about business. You open up opportunities for yourself. Even if you don't stick with candle making, you learned a lot through the process that it allows you to do other stuff. And so I'm all about us educating ourselves and growing and self-development and running a business and making candles helps that tremendously. That's a really long-winded answer. I feel like I just rambled forever, but
No, I do the same thing. I mean, I could talk about it forever because I feel like there's so much more to starting a business than just making money from it. Of course, that is, thinking about being able to quit your job and do your business full time is a dream for so many people. But being able to delay that gratification is very important too. Being able to delay that if it's not going to put you in the right position. If you're not ready yet, don't do it if you're not ready. And I feel like a lot of people can sometimes rush into that if they're not ready and they want to just quit their jobs, or they think if they start their business, then they're going to be able to quit their jobs right away. And it can sometimes take years and years of just putting forth all that effort. And yeah, it can be really hard. But another part that I know me and Wade, we experience is being able to help all of you guys out is another part of the process of being so rewarding, to just being able to share and teach. And I want to be a teacher. When I was in high school, that's actually what I was going to be going to school for and doing. I want to be an English teacher. And so I kind of was able to combine all of my passions into one and be able to kind of make it work in this way. And YouTube has allowed us to be able to do that. Yes. But it just kind of adds a whole nother level to it. It does add more pressure and time into it, because we talked about this earlier off recording, but we have to kind of balance our time of YouTube and our business and making sure that we're kind of spending enough time on both. And that can be a whole new challenge, but it doesn't mean that it's a negative aspect. It just is a more challenging part of it.
Yeah. And like I mentioned to you, this was something, a new feeling of, like we were just talking about that, but now adding this element in of being on YouTube and helping others too, again, it's just added more flair to doing this. It makes it even more enjoyable. Like you said, it obviously takes more time, and it can be daunting, but I really enjoy doing it. I mentioned to you off camera too, that, the reason that YouTube has appealed to me so much now being on it is I used to do a lot of, public speaking in front of large audiences. And so I would go to events or whatever and do big speeches and things in front of bigger crowds. And you can't really do that as much right now anymore. And so this is kind of filled. I'm reaching just as many people, actually more, through this. And even though it's not the same feel, I still like being in person. I still like being in front of people physically, but this is pretty close. And I feel like I'm doing the same thing, just digitally in a different way. And so I've really, really enjoyed doing this as well. Like Erica said, we both really enjoy doing this. It's rewarding for us, and hopefully it's helpful for you. But yeah, the last thing I would say, unless you have anything else to add, Erica, is if we've both really enjoyed doing this, just make sure in the description we'll have links to the previous video or the other video in the other channel. So be sure to check out both. It's different questions on each one, obviously. And then if any of you enjoyed this collaboration between Eric and I, let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed it, if you'd like to see more of those. Eric and I have talked about potentially doing some more in the future. So let us know what you think. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this and the conversational kind of candid approach. And Erica, thank you for your time too. I appreciate it. You have any final thoughts as well?
No, I know I've been talking so much that I'm like, I don't know. But no, I appreciate all of you guys watching both of our channels. And, we appreciate any further questions you guys have. We'll try to do our best with answering them in the comment section below. But yeah, we just appreciate you guys. We would not be here if it wasn't for you guys doing what we're doing. So we just appreciate you.
All right, everyone. Well, that does it. That wraps up this part 2 of the collaboration. So once again, if you're coming here after watching part 1 on Erica's channel, please consider subscribing to my channel as well. Both of us cover a vast assortment of different topics, and even on the topics that we do kind of overlay, we come at them from very different perspectives. So her and I both appreciate you being here and being part of both channels. If you are starting with this video, don't forget to check out in the description below the link to her channel and the part 1 video that is on her channel. We both enjoy helping others and kind of teaching from what we have learned through our own experiences. And if you're interested in more collaborations between Eric and I in the future, please just let us know in the comments whether you enjoy this and you would like to see more. We really appreciate it. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.